For those of us who've joined us in Napa before, you know the Beta SMB Institute Leaders Forum is special. It's a special location, a special venue, and best of all, special people. We pride ourselves on curating an A-list of attendees, the best and brightest leaders of our $500 billion plus business to small business marketplace. And every day we are adding speakers, workshops, and special events to this intimate forum, all of it highlighting the shared challenges and opportunities in a setting that drives casual and candid exchange. Join us at the 2022 Beta SMB Institute Leaders Forum, May 11th and 12th in Napa, California. Tickets are on sale now at betasmbi.com/leadersforum22. Hey, good day, everybody. Dave Walker here with the Beta SMB Institute. And, in our continuing series with our charter members, Accenture, we've been bringing you a number of different sessions that really, first and foremost, are part of their Grow Small Business initiative and campaign that they've undertaken over the last couple of years, but really bringing forward to our community subject matter experts that really can help us dive down into some of the more challenging challenges that we have in front of us over the course of the next year. And hence our guest today, Glen Hartman from Accenture. Glen, welcome.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I'm very excited about this conversation. But before we really get it rolling, and I'm sure it'll get really, really rolling here based on our conversation leading into this, that give us a quick background on you, what your role is, what your history is, and I think that'll just table set what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. I lead a group inside of Accenture called Accenture Interactive, which is focused exclusively on helping our clients create great experiences for customers and consumers. And that includes B2B, includes B2C, includes small to medium business, includes enterprise. When we say customer, we mean the broad range of, I guess, the big C, if you look at it like that. Mm-hmm. And mostly, we're all encapsulating things in a very, I guess, holistic way. So we're looking at all types of interactions. Any way a client and a brand could interact with a business, small, medium business, or end customer. So it could be advertising, could be marketing, sales, customer service, loyalty, online, offline, in-store, any touch point for a business working B2B and also to the end customer is what our focus is.
So that's an incredible spectrum, but it has obviously developed, your team has developed an enormous amount of expertise on each of those touch points. I want to pull back, and the subject of this conversation is really about personalization. And I want you to talk about it because talk about personalization, the history of it, the role of it, the value of it, et cetera, et cetera. Because I think that for many of the marketers that I talk to, especially, this is generally where the conversation resides within an organization, but really now permeating the entire organization, is this question or this conundrum of customer relationships. And the conundrum is customers want a more personalized experience, a more customized experience in their interactions with someone selling to them. On the other hand, they want their privacy, and they don't want their behavior to be observed too closely. They want to know that they've opted in, not just simply, even declaring so much as the fact that, yeah, I'll accept cookies, that you're tracking me. And that creates, I think, a constant back and forth. Are we being proactive enough to collect the data, and are we being to effectively personalize, or are we reaching in too much? So give us your sense of that conundrum right now, and really where is the solution for that conundrum?
Well, Dave, the question brings up, I'd say, a larger frame for us to look at, and it could be helpful for our whole conversation today. And that when I was talking about some of the tactical ways that we're helping clients through different touch points, I think we use that term, or channels or other things. It's almost in a way a dated way of thinking of how to engage with people or businesses. And what we've been focusing on at Accenture Interactive a lot is redefining how all of those things come together into one word, which is more around experience. Now, lots and lots of people talk about experience in lots of ways. So they have customer experience or CX or the UI or the experience of the mobile app, the experience of a website, the experience of the in-store when you walk into retail. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. But at Accenture Interactive, the way we define it is we call it the big E. I just realized I think I said the big C for customer. I promise not to capitalize every letter in the alphabet. That'll be my last one. But the big E is, it stands for experience, is the entire experience. So it's that marketing, sales, commerce, content, all those things that I was mentioning before, and how that relates, what the experience is like through every part of that journey. But it also stands for empathy. Now, empathy is different than personalization. As a matter of fact, it's way beyond it, because when you start to empathize, you get into the standing in the shoes of the business that you're, the person that you're talking with, or the end customer. You realize that there's a whole bunch of other things beyond getting the right message at the right time, at the right channel, to the right product, all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of contextual thought that needs to go into empathizing, because people have different needs at different times and different moments, and they change a lot. So when we look at empathy, even if you took a very simple personal example, not even a business, I'll give you plenty of business examples, but just personally, I happen to, well, before COVID, I travel a lot for work, a real lot. So at one time I was some special member of the loyalty at a major hotel, like one you've never even heard of. It's a secret. The only time I was even looked at it being potentially semi-cool, that I knew something, on the inside. But what I'm saying is they had all sorts of data on me, like the real 360-degree thing. They know everything about me, my comings, my goings. They know if I need hypoallergenic pillows. They know what I like to eat, room service at 2 o'clock in the morning. They know all sorts of stuff about me, and they can really customize and personalize that experience. But when I travel for work, I have wildly different needs than I do when I travel on vacation. Just something very simple. When I travel for work, I like to have a hotel room right next to the elevator, because I'm usually getting up for a flight in the morning. I'm running late. I just want to get in and out. But when I travel with my family, I try and get a room as far away from the elevator as possible, because I'm going to be a bad father. I'm going to keep my daughter up late on vacation. I want her to sleep in without the business travel is waking her up in the morning. But no way that hotel chain could know that unless they understand the content in the moment. So this kind of thinking for empathy is changed dramatically, especially because of COVID. So people's buying patterns, consumer needs, the way people want to engage are very, very different. And the last part of the big E is emotion. So when you have a manufacturer or a brand or a product, they have a certain emotion that's connected to the way that they're engaging with their businesses or with their end customer. And we have found that if a brand, we look at it as a set of promises. And the way those promises are kept are through the experience. And I can give you an SMB example of this. So I don't know if, I don't know a lot about your family, but let's just assume that you have children for this example.
Guilty.
Okay. So this is an automotive example. So let's say that you're, I don't know, you're a Ford loyalist. That's your brand. You have that. Your grandfather had a Ford, and your father had one, and your mom had one, and you have one. And it's a generational thing. And you love Fords, and it's not just because you like the commercials or there's some brand. Maybe there's certain things that emotionally connected you to that brand. Maybe when you were a kid, you sprained your ankle on the soccer field, and your mom grabbed you, put you in the Ford, and got you to the emergency room. And you remember that. Or maybe your grandfather used to come and take you out on Sundays for breakfast, and you used to go in his Ford, and there's some kind of connection there. So now let's say that your daughter, it's time for her to get her first car, and you're going to continue the brand loyal tradition and say, let's go buy you a Ford. So she's 17 or whatever, just got her license. It's a big, exciting thing. As a matter of fact, you might even get online and configure the car, and she gets to pick out the color and some of the features that she wants. And then you make an appointment through that a tool to go to the dealership and be able to, test drive, look at the car, the whole thing, and maybe buy. But when you get there, they don't actually have the car that your daughter configured. And there's maybe a young, inexperienced salesperson there that shows up for the appointment, but he tries to move you into a different car. And it's an uncomfortable thing. And the experience on the lot didn't match any of the brand promise that came from the OEM.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, we have heavy data, deep, rich data that says that you'll walk off that lot and buy a Chrysler.
Mm-hmm.
After years and years of brand loyalty, if the experience can't connect with the emotional engagement that you're expecting from that promise or that brand,
Mm-hmm.
you can lose the customer. So this big E idea, this context, when you start to ask that other much more specific question around the privacy and how much personal information people are going to give, if you have those things in mind and you realize that the experience is going to be the way that that promise is delivered for the value, the next step is finding a way to quantify trust. So I'll give you one more example. I'm in storytelling mode here, I guess, but
Mm-hmm.
think about this. You go to a doctor, even if it's for your yearly physical or something like that, your checkup. You go in, you make the appointment, you sit and you wait, and then they're probably late. Then you go in and you sit in another room, usually on like a white piece of paper on a big thing like you're at the deli, and they make you take all your clothes off. And then the woman doctor comes in and starts asking you questions like super personal stuff, things all sorts of personal information that you're going to offer up, and about your history and your family's history and your mother and the whole thing. And you are going to go ahead and feel comfortable most times giving up that information, because if you do, the diagnosis is going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't tell her, then it's not really going to benefit. But see, that trust factor, that quotient of value to information that's come up is a currency that people are looking for in every interaction they have with a brand or a company at all times. So there are mechanisms and ways of proving how you can be trusted, but it has to be a consistent part of your strategy when you're building out any kind of experience.
Well, I love the three components of the big E. I mean, and I think they're excellent framework for really this conversation. Talk to us. You mentioned it briefly, but give us a sense of what's the value of an organization, really, an enterprise, really applying these three E's to their approach to their customers.
Well, I mean, if they're thinking of small and medium businesses, I mean, they have to think just some basic things. How can you help them? They're pressed for time. They don't have scale. There's a certain wearing multiple hats environment that happens a lot in these areas. And just being helpful is the value. So I often, we work with clients a lot on this, and we look at the metrics that they have, their success metrics, and they'll say things like, well, we want to convert more customers, or we want to sell more, whatever the word. And I thought to myself, I'm like, if you're really thinking of this of the small business owner here, I mean, I don't know about you, but when was the last time you went somewhere and you wanted to get converted? I mean, like raise the hands in the room. No one wants that, right? You want to be helped or teamed up with or partner or get something useful. You don't, so there's a whole mental model around this that changes the KPIs. It changes what you look at as success. And you start to redefine success and reorganize your teams and your organization and your operating models around what would be more meaningful to that small business owner.
Mm-hmm. So in the conversation, particularly around the executive committee table, ultimately does draw back to a P&L and does draw back to financial performance. what are some of the metrics you think that are supportive of the big E, that are at minimum proxies for the fact that they are going to increase sales, they're going to increase profitability, they're going to increase efficiency, that when they look at the impact report, they're not looking at brand awareness, they're looking, and they're not even looking necessarily at metrics around brand loyalty, they're looking at the things that ultimately they report to the street. What are some of those metrics that really are behind the big E, and ultimately it's personalization of the relationship with the customer that you point to?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's engagement
Mm-hmm.
and different types of engagement. And a lot of it is understanding how to help break down silos inside to get different kinds of decisions to be made in an organization.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with different kinds of content that needs to be shared inside an organization, you can track how often that happens and see what the engagement is for maybe a sales rep and how many people that they're talking with. But the idea, of course, you want to track sales. Of course, you want to track, the regular. It's just how you got there is the difference. So we have, like, when we're talking about personalization a lot, I keep saying that this idea of the big E experience goes way beyond personalization. The reason for that is it's really like an experience renaissance. I mean, this is the time to reimagine everything inside, and you would be able to offer up new experiences and new kinds of ways to introduce products and services. So when I was saying content, that could include a new product, a new service, an upsell, a cross-sell through this engagement. So this umbrella of engagement, if you have the experiences correct, done correctly, that's for that particular person, but they can see the connective tissue to say someone else. This helps, I guess, spread the love, if you will, and help you sell and create bigger relationships within the organization. The value is expanded beyond that one person that you've been trying to get as a buyer, and it affects much more of the whole business. So this is much, it's where experience becomes the business imperative, where everyone is in the experience business and you're trying to connect those kinds of things, and that will expand the way that people buy and the way that people engage. And a lot of times this one of the factors of this is become more and more, especially with COVID, is to take a look at how commerce fits into each of the experiences. So, just as a couple of examples, today, if you look at old KPIs and old metrics, people say we're doing lead generation or lead nurturing, or we're trying to get interaction through media. You're buying, retail media, or you're on different sites. There is certain expectations now to be able to transact on every single one of those areas. So even something as simple as clicking on a banner, you should be able to connect with a customer service person and or artificial intelligence bot and or make a purchase right there. It's almost like a one-click experience from almost any entry point. Or if a salesperson's showing up at your door, they should have enabled technology also to be able to help you transact, not necessarily buy, but engage in some kind of transaction, samples, new product look, information to pass on to others. There's a variety of different enablers that you could look at to heighten engagement that would absolutely have a direct correlation to sales eventually. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Makes terrific sense. And it provokes the question of, okay, well, and it might be a little unfair of a question, but what does the stack look like then? That if the stack has been really designed and evolved primarily driven by lead generation and lead conversion and qualification, based on old KPIs, what does the new stack look like, and the processes that support it?
It's a big question, and I would say the question. Okay, in our experience, because Accenture Interactive, Accenture as a whole has a lot to do with creating these experiences, but it's backed by a lot of data and technology enablement, right? So we're working with all of the stacks and partners in a very, very tight knit way. So why did I mention that? I mentioned it for two reasons. One is that if you look at the stacks,
Mm-hmm.
ad tech and martech and commerce and B2B lead generation and all these things, they almost all the big players have almost all the same things.
Mm-hmm.
So, you pick any one of them, they're all acquiring the same things. What they are trying to emulate the big E also. So they have sales component and a customer service component and a marketing component and a commerce component and campaign management component and CRM and data and all these kinds of things. So what ends up happening is you create somewhat of a sea of sameness. The idea of customer experience and CX and UX and Salesforce automation and all these things, well, it's hard to tell the difference. It's hard to see the differentiation unless you do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is, okay, you got to get that stuff set up. You have to figure out how the data is going to flow and make sure there's so much to it, right? And the operating model, the organizational structure, how can you provide shared
Mm-hmm.
services to multiple businesses, is a
Mm-hmm.
variety of things. We can talk about that, the tactics of that in a second. But at a higher level, you have to put a performance sensibility that's based on the experience and the outcome that you want. So, for instance, when you look at the stacks, the new stack
Mm-hmm.
is how do you get an experience out of the stack? Because
Mm-hmm.
as a consulting firm, we can guarantee that we can install and set up and configure your CRM stack, pick any vendor, and it
Mm-hmm.
will run perfectly. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you get the outcome you want to get out of it? Now, this takes creativity. I mean, like actual creative and different kinds of content and ways to handle data and trade and pass data back and forth to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not sure. I think it was. I think it was maybe the CMO at P&G. I think he famously one time had said, um, "How do we connect the experience across all of our brands?" So if they have
Right.
hundreds of brands, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember if it was him or not, but it was someone who came up with this really funny, interesting way to me, saying like, well, how do we go from like diapers or Pampers or whatever the brand was to
Mm-hmm.
pens? Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you take someone through all of their lifestyle and
Right.
trade data? Because everyone's in
Right.
silos. How do you do that? And when they pose those kinds of questions, that's when you
Mm-hmm.
realize whatever tech stack you have, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
uh, I mean, they're all great and they can do
Mm-hmm.
amazing things. So when I say it doesn't matter, it's just that you can configure those, but only if you're going to start to get I'm saying require more from your service provider.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of like outcome based projects
Mm-hmm.
where we get paid on outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very new way of looking at how you want to implement a tech stack or a CRM strategy or an
Mm-hmm.
experience-led thing. What if you set up those new KPIs for certain segments or for
Mm-hmm.
certain engagement or something new that you didn't think of before? How do you, if you can have your service providers and consultants and agencies and all these people work toward that outcome? That's a
Mm-hmm.
new way of guaranteeing success and value.
You mentioned AI, and I just kind of want to unpack a little bit the role that AI plays in this successful integration of a stack, and really AI's application towards so many different levels of customization. Can you just kind of give us a primer on the the evolution of AI as part of the stack, basically, and what role AI plays in successfully delivering the big E, and what maybe the future is of AI? Where is it headed?
Sure. This goes a lot with your other question too. So I was, I think, keeping things at a high level, talking about a method for enabling the stack, but the new stack will have new types of data and machine learning and artificial intelligence and other kinds of things are part of that. And
Mm-hmm.
understanding that how that data can be used is a big part of the new the new direction of these experiences. So the evolution and the way artificial intelligence came about is, I would say, less important because it's very common now to have it be a part of experiences. But what I would say that hasn't been tapped yet, and this is where we're heading, you'll also see things for different kinds of commerce and different environments, like the hot one everyone talks about now is metaverse, although no one knows exactly what that means yet. But it's just understanding different ways of using different types of data. And artificial intelligence is wonderful to do some of that, but it hasn't necessarily fit with how to contextualize that and really get the outcomes you want. So I think one of the themes that I'm hitting on here, and if I were to encapsulate, is you really do have to have a human element along with the artificial intelligence, and you need to tap other kinds of data to help provide the context that you need to make the most out of that AI engagement. So we had one manufacturer that we were working with. I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm interested in talking about diapers today. So I'll just keep going with that. I'm not sure why that is, but they were marketing one of their products. I don't know if you said you have kids. Are you familiar with this term blowout? Do you know what this is?
Yes.
Okay. And so not only are you glad that you invited me here, but I'm now going to talk about poop on
Yes, exactly. Fortunately, that was a long time ago, but I remember being absolutely blown away by blowout.
Oh, hey, okay. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, you get, the diaper explodes and the whole thing. And it's,
Yeah.
it's a thing in the diaper industry. They talk about a lot. So there was some things that came out about this thing for this one particular brand. And they said, like in some of the comments on product pages, some of the ratings, some of there's a lot of different social data and different things coming in, explaining the end customer was explaining, well, the reason for that is because they made their diapers out of a new material that's much smaller, thinner, and that's why the blow up. But it turns out that's wrong. It turns out that the manufacturer and the retailers and all the ones who are sending this out and when marketing it was saying, no, we did the new technology and the thinner diaper because you asked us to be able to create one that would look better with outfits, but would still be as absorbent, which we've done. So, as a matter of fact, it's even more absorbent and better at blowouts than the other one based on this thing. So now they didn't realize that this whole ecosystem, these different types of data were coming in. Okay, so now the artificial intelligence machine and the way the call center and the way the comments work, when people would send in comments about this, they would get some like templated thing back that's not really related to this very specific issue. So then the social media and all these other channels started making fun of the brand for giving them some automated templated thing that's not addressing that. So that snowballed again. Meanwhile, sales are actually going down, right? Affecting them. But once they collected this data, it helped them change the content, then change the response thing, and change the way they marketed and merchandised at the store. And it turned around based on new types of data, contextual data, to change the way the product is perceived and ultimately influence new types of engagement through new channels that led to more sales.
It's fascinating because I think that just that case example, I can probably think of 100 in just our space where the very vocal feedback of small business customers, they're not shy about complaining, that's for sure, or finding fault with things, was not contextualized. And there wasn't really a kind of there wasn't an applied ability, at least. There may have been capabilities, but not applied, to really understand, well, was this an isolated incident or was this a very, very common theme on the product or the service or the offering or whatever? And it took too long to discover.
Yeah.
that, this is really what's going on.
This
And
particular brand wasn't even tracking. They didn't even know this stuff was happening, really. I mean, maybe
correct,
a little in the
correct.
factory, but it wasn't part of the way that their attention was set.
Right. And the place, and I don't know if this is true in, again, as you really kind of apply the big E, is retention and the metrics around retention. Is that one of the keys to really opening an organization's eyes to the fact that, wait a minute, this isn't just about closing a sale and delivering a product, that there are elements past the sale that really are frankly more vital to understand than the metrics leading into the sale.
You couldn't have said it any better. It's just perfect. I can give you a good case study example. We just happened to do at Accenture Interactive. We were working with the largest telco in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa is very pertinent for our audience. 91% of all businesses are small
Mm-hmm.
in South Africa, but more than 70% of them fail in the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this telco company was largely helping them by creating the yellow pages,
Mm-hmm.
and which is not helpful at all. And they decided to reinvent their entire way of doing business and created a whole new experience for small and medium businesses. They created a new marketplace called Yep, and came with mobile apps, websites, and a variety of things where small to medium business could use their infrastructure to create online stores. It's like a white label. You sign up and you all of a sudden have an online store for commerce, and a way to get into the digital space. But then beyond trying to help a flower shop or a hair salon or a small manufacturer or all these small businesses, they provided new services. So
Mm-hmm.
they provided financing, or they created a small business academy to teach best practices. They created shared and co-located office space.
Mm-hmm.
They had shared infrastructure services that they could use, hosting and other kinds of things, to drive their business and create efficiency. And it was all brought together through their loyalty program. And that was the one metric, was
Mm-hmm.
how they could keep people in a loyal way and continually buying, hopefully cross-selling and upselling and using some of these new products, but as core customers. And the loyalty was the glue for them when you brought that up. And I think it's a big metric, for a big telling metric for everyone moving forward.
In that particular case, did you find in working with that team, that executive leadership team, that one of the most important first steps that you helped them take was to realize, was to ask the question of what are they doing? I mean, it sounds overly simplified, but what are you doing for small business, for these small business customers?
That was it. It's very much the question. And we took one step further, because the days of coming up with a strategy and then implementing the strategy and then seeing how it works, it's done. So we created some prototypes for them, different mobile apps, different kinds of sites, and very quickly brought them to the small businesses, owners, and in networks, and asked them for their feedback, and then continue to iterate with them. Is this helpful? Is this what you need? What else? This kind of co-creation added so much. It helped with the big E for empathy, and it helped them figure out what to do for different segments. All small businesses are not created equal, right? And all types of industries and different things, they started creating different kinds of segments that were informed by the small businesses and had different metrics and different user interfaces and a variety of different things that made it work for them.
That's terrific. I want to, I guess I want to conclude, because there's so much that that is rich here and worthy of unpacking further. But I think that what a lot of members of our audience, 70% of our audience are VP level or above. So they're paid to think strategy. They're paid to think not just tactically, how do we deliver? Of course, that's part of it, but really think strategically about, are we doing this the right way? Are we approaching this the right way? I don't know if you would agree or not, but it seems like the the elements of the big E, kind of pre-big E, let's just call it, all those things existed, but you've articulated them and kind of put them together in a very sensible and easy to understand way. But we've been on this evolutionary path where we have been enhancing our customer relationships and personalization kind of a feature at a time or a capability at a time. And that's kind of created a grown like Topsy stack of both technology and processes and talent supporting, et cetera, around those additions that we've had. Meanwhile, one of the counter forces is that there's privacy laws that continue to get tighter and tighter and more global, and start to really lock down our ability to use cookies and tracking and all that kind of stuff. And they peel away features and capabilities from that particular stack. Is it time for for CEOs to metaphorically take a long drag on their cigarette and say, we got to blow this up? I mean, we really do need to reset the entire organization, really very much like your case study from South Africa. We really need to reset the entire organization around something that is significantly more customer centric in a very real way.
I think it's an emphatic yes. And we're seeing it. There's a bunch of different indicators, especially now because of COVID. We're seeing CEO initiatives that used to be looked at as nice to have, or something that, yeah, I know we should do this, but we'll get to it. It's too hard. There's too many silos, and it's really challenging. And the CMO couldn't really drive it through, or maybe the chief sales officer couldn't drive through. And we're seeing now two things. One, lots of new titles: chief growth officer, chief experience officer, chief marketing and technology officer, chief revenue officer. And this is a code for CEOs that are, let's say, fed up with trying to ask their siloed groups and organizations to get this right.
Mm-hmm.
And the days of these initiatives being nice to have are over. They're must have. So the new demand of the consumer is there. There's new business models coming out all over the place. I mean, you can look at companies like Lemonade Insurance compared to other insurance products. I'm not just looking at digital disruptors. You can even look at huge, big brands that are reinventing themselves all day long. I mean, Disney Plus, their streaming service met their 5-year goal in the first 6 months.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you want to talk about, blowing things up, all the distributors and all the, all the streaming services. There's so many different examples of how you have to reinvent. It's an absolute requirement. And again, these are now, they're not programs. They're not campaigns. These are CEO initiatives to fully transform, reverse engineer a company around this big E idea. And it's really true, this idea of the sea of sameness that I mentioned before. It can't be about the functions. Everyone has more. Everybody has the same functionality, or if you don't, great, you're a little behind. Okay, you got to have parity. You need to be at par, but that's not enough. Really understanding the new speed that the customer is required is completely on a different clock time than the average enterprise can move. So the agility, the speed, the way that they need to change is at a rate that we've never seen. I've never seen it. The demand for this kind of change. So that means looking at your operating models,
right?
Look at your organization structure. What should be shared services? What should be customized? If you're global, how do you handle different markets? And it's very, very challenging, but it can be done. I mean, Best Buy, when COVID hit, they had to have a whole new shopping experience for buy online and pick up, curbside pickup. They had to redesign how they kept all their stores clean and
Hmm.
safe. They created um, virtual consultants. I mean, overnight, they had in, I think it was 1,400 stores. They changed to be able to do curbside pickup in somewhere in like 3 days.
Hmm.
The speed,
Hmm.
all of the all of the supply chain and all the manufacturers and all the brands and all these things had to be addressed. And it's just a whole new game. So I've
Hmm.
said yes, an emphatic yes. Now, with the exception of the nicotine on the cigarette, I would say that yes, you're spot
Yeah,
on.
maybe a bad visual there, but it does feel like it is one of those deep breaths moments, to say the least. And it prompts really my a truly final question, which is how how does uh, someone viewing this who is in that senior leadership position, how do they begin the conversation with you? How do you most frequent? I know everybody's different and every situation is different, but how do you most frequently find those first steps of taking consideration of this? Really, how do they go? How do they play?
Well, I mean, now it's much more of a CEO imperative, as I mentioned. So we're finding they're asking questions, just like you said. What does a small business or SMB, what do they need? What do they want? And we're really
Hmm.
helping them try and reimagine and rethink what that success looks like in those terms.
Hmm.
So, like you said before, though, there's how do we make we need to be profitable, we need to
Hmm.
grow and all that. And how do you make those things happen? So, what we've been doing a lot is this idea of prototyping or coming up with ways to set up something that you could look at
Hmm.
um, and try and
Hmm.
test and get feedback on in a much quicker time. And
Hmm.
and also, I think I mentioned earlier, most people should start to really request more of their service providers or agencies or whoever you're using, and
Hmm.
have them start to think of performance based and outcome based. Uh,
Hmm.
so if we're going to introduce a new KPI or some new success criteria that we believe the small business owner cares
Hmm.
about, well, we better sign up with you to
Hmm.
show how that's actually
Hmm.
going to help you sell more, get more loyalty or whatever.
Right, right.
So those kinds of things where, you're doing a parallel path. You're looking at getting the basics right. We call them brilliant basics. But as I said, if you're behind and you don't have the things that are just required, we have to work on getting you there. But at the same time, you gotta be working on this larger transformation. And sometimes we'll set up internal teams where you look at the future, and we'll create that future instead of trying to integrate it into the whole company from the get-go. You just create a small like startup, if you will, inside, watch how it works, and then we can move that it's a teach it to fish moment into
Hmm.
the organization rather than trying to tackle everything all at the same time. So because of the data, because
Hmm.
of the merger of creativity, content, commerce, because of these integrated stacks, the
Hmm.
technology, the way it just, there's so much available that was not available
Hmm.
or to do these kinds of prototypes or do these minimal viable products and these kinds of things. You can really test and move quickly. And that's really the way we're able to answer that question. What does a small business or small and medium business owner need and want? And how do we prove it out to make it less theoretical, less of a strategy project and
Hmm.
teeth?
I would really love you to come talk about that specific topic of the process of building prototypes, and laboratorying, and Agile calls it smoke tests, and to create that MVP. That is so, Glenn. That is incredibly powerful topic, I think, for our community, as they really try to take the good intentions, frankly, that were really brought home hard over the course of the last 2 years and its many challenges, and frankly, put people on a very different footing with a very different mindset. I think many of them are now facing, though, okay, I, am I on a road to nowhere? I mean, am I, and I, with the best intentions, I'm really not going. I don't see that lighthouse of where I'm going. What is it exactly, and how do I do it? So I would love you to come to Napa and talk about that and workshop that, because I think it would be incredibly valuable for our leadership community.
It would be
And
great.
again, thanks for doing this. I very much appreciate it. It's I know we could go on for a couple of hours probably
Yeah,
back and forth, but it was really, really helpful. And I appreciate you really quickly adapting the conversation from personalization into experience, and everything that we hope to deliver in the form of, well, what is it? How does it work? And where is it going? Really, I think brought home in a much clearer way in the way that you framed it. Appreciate that.
great. I'm glad. Thanks for saying that, and thanks for having me. It was really a fun conversation, and I would love to come to Napa with you and do more stuff in person. That'd be great.
Awesome. Terrific. Well, thanks
Thanks.
again for doing this.
Okay, thanks, Dave, and see you.